Good morning, happy Monday. Welcome to this first in my series of live trainings again, talks, presentations. This session, or these series of sessions that we're going to do today are entitled, I decided to call it, of course it's mindfulness for mental strength, and it will be training you or teaching you mental strength, but I've decided to call it mindful living because I've been working a lot through the last few series and sessions on conscious living, waking up, helping to become more aware of your thoughts, aware of your thinking. So this is going to be an 8-part series, and this is part 1. And what we're going to focus on today is attention and obviously being in the present, and attention being extremely important. But before I begin, I just want to maybe shout out, I see there's been a lot of new followers on my professional page, on my Facebook page, from the subcontinent, from India and Nepal, and to say it's a beautiful country. I've managed to visit both of those countries back in the early 2000s. I visited Mumbai, Jaipur, Delhi and Kathmandu. Spent quite a bit of time there. Hi Nadine. And so I'm back on the series, and I know Nadine prompted me to not only just use PowerPoint. So what I'm going to be doing is so when I'm doing training like this kind of session, I'll have PowerPoints, but I'll try and intersperse these with, like I did over the weekend, with some of my own thoughts and some winging it sessions of just chatting about some of my ideas and feelings around lockdown and COVID, etc. So, and just if you haven't been watching or if you haven't seen any of my previous videos, I just want to let you know that there's probably about 30 now that have been archived on my Facebook page. So you can go in there and watch them, and please comment, share them if you think anyone else will be interested in them. And if you're watching today's session, please say hi so that I know who's there. Like I said, I can't see who's actually checking in, so say hi. Again, if you like it, leave a message, put some comments down there in the taper, and share it. So share it with your friends. All right, so like I said, today we're going to be touching on the first session, which is attention and the now. And we have to start with attention, because if we don't focus and we can't attend, we cannot store any information either. So extremely important to be attending, and presence has become quite a popular word lately. So today's going to focus on those 2 building blocks of mindfulness. So hi Anne, thanks for checking in. So let's go across. I've used this probably ad nauseum, this hurricane metaphor. So again, it's just for those of you that are checking in for the first time. A hurricane is a wonderful metaphor for our lives right now, not just during lockdown or COVID, but pretty much all the time. So we end up getting caught in this hurricane, and we have to find our centers. So I'm not going to go into it because it is covered in my other sessions, but just to be aware that the whole focus of probably all of my talks is trying to get people to find their centers, and not to find shelter in your center, but to use your centers as a place to be able to go in and check in, regroup, think about your thoughts, observe your thoughts, and then to go back out into the hurricane, because we can't avoid the hurricane. Our lives are stressful, and there is a lot of suffering in our lives, but we have to be able to find somewhere to go and regroup. And if we will not find that in the hurricane, we have to find it in our centers, arguably find it in our centers first, and once we I don't really want to use the word, but if we can evolve, and eventually if we evolve more and become more and more conscious, slowly but surely we'd be able to ascend above the hurricane, and then we're not even close to being near anything, and a lot more distant from it, or psychologically distant from it. So today's session, like I said, we're going to be checking in with the attention in the now, and I'll talk you through the whole series sort of later on. There's a slide right at the end of this presentation. So what do we want to do with this session? Obviously to familiarize you with all the 2 main building blocks of mindfulness, which is attention and the present moment. And then to just make sure, sorry, I'm just trying to scroll down here so I can just see who's checking in. And I want to let you understand, like what's just happened with me, that thinking distracts us by placing us in the past or future. And the minute a thought pops in, it takes us to another place rather than doing what we're supposed to be doing. If someone can teach me how to watch my tape as it goes up, so at least I can check in and people are saying hi and I'm able to see it, but I think I need a second screen. But I'm new to this, so please forgive me. So again, also in my previous series, I've said 100 times over that the minute we get into our heads, we get into the past or we get into the future. And this is not where we're supposed to be, all right? Right now, we are in the moment. We are right in front of us. Hi, Melissa. Thanks for checking in. I think it might be your first time, so welcome. But we have to stay in the present. So we're going to be talking through how do we stay in the present, how do I get my thoughts to stop, for example, and this will all be covered in today's session. Then some theoretical background on what is attention. So attention is, again, like I mentioned to you, this is the core component, because the core component of mindfulness is being able to focus on something in that moment. So if I'm wanting to study, I can focus on that. If I wanted to breathe, I can focus on my breathing. If I'm drinking coffee, to focus on that, and not to be distracted by all this thought. And often what we call this is when we use our breath or our body. So in psychology, listen to me, in mindfulness, we often use the breath as an anchor or our body to stay connected. This helps us or alerts us to this ongoing mindlessness that's happening in our head, so that we are able to bring back our attention and put our vigilance in. And this orienting or selective attention is what we call it when we keep bringing back our attention. And mindfulness, or this mindful kind of training, teaches us how to regulate ourselves through this process of checking in, stopping regularly through the course of the day and checking in with what am I thinking, what am I feeling, and what's going on in my body. Because without this, we tend to never check in. I often say to people, tell me what you're feeling right now. And they're like, what does that mean? Or what's going on in your body? And they cannot even bring themselves out of their heads and into their bodies. So mindfulness is a great way to bring yourself back. And with mindfulness training, it doesn't happen naturally. So your mind's going to keep running away. But that's the practice, is the constant bringing your mind back. No, I'm supposed to be breathing now. No, I'm supposed to be focusing on Greg's talk right now, for example. All right, so this is what attention is. And without attention, you could stare at your school books or your exam books or whatever it is that you're trying to study, and you could be there for 4 hours and not get anything stored into your brain. Then the present moment, this is the crux of mindfulness. It teaches one how to direct attention not only to what's happening around us, so not this awareness of everything around us in the external environment, but also the internal environment. Like I've just said to you, what am I thinking about right now? How am I feeling? What's going on in my body? And then this would occur then in a non-judgmental way and a more accepting way. And in this series, we're going to spend a whole session talking about judgment, and we'll spend a whole session talking about acceptance. Because so often we judge our thoughts or our feelings to be bad, and that sets up a whole lot of tension in our bodies. And because of that, we don't want to accept these thoughts, so we tend to run away from them, or we try and run away from them, and that can lead us into eating or drinking or whatever it might be, gambling, some sort of addiction, self-medication. Even worry. So even if you, I don't want to call it a goody two-shoes, but let's call it what it is. So you do nothing wrong, nothing bad, okay? Then just rumination. Rumination is thinking about the same things. Hi, Madeleine, welcome, thanks for joining. So when we ruminate, we constantly also put ourselves in a place which is not in the present, and worry the same. So worry is definitely not a way of problem solving. So if we're worrying about where is this COVID going, what's going to happen, am I going to get it, this is not solving anything, and it just takes us out of the present into some place that's not what's happening right now. And like I said, this rumination and worry will stop you from even enjoying family and friends, loved ones, whoever's around you, because you're not present. And maybe your partners or your family have said this to you before. You're never here, you might be looking at me, but your brain is somewhere else. And mindfulness and this conscious living and conscious awareness is all about bringing your mindfulness back to being present. And mindfulness training has definitely been found to decrease both of these. There's enough scientific evidence now on mindfulness and the efficacy of mindfulness that I wouldn't be pitching it if I wasn't totally convinced and I wasn't living it. I should have mentioned to you, I've run probably 22 8-week courses on mindfulness. I've attended one mindfulness-based stress reduction course, as well as co-facilitating one mindfulness-based stress reduction course. And one is never an expert in mindfulness. We never become mindful. We can only ever be mindful. So it's not somewhere where you're going to arrive. You just have to constantly be switched on. And it does get easier the more you practice it. So just a brief definition then of what is mindfulness. Keeping one's complete attention to an experience, on a moment-to-moment basis in an open and non-judgmental way. So when you're drinking, I keep going back to just drinking a cup of coffee. That's the beautiful thing about mindfulness, is the whole lot of informal exercises one can use. And they keep talking about doing just one thing. So when you do one thing, be with that one thing that you're doing. So if you're playing with your kids, play with your kids and don't be distracted. Be there in a total present moment. Okay, and the open, non-judgmental way we'll talk about in the other sessions, so that'll become clearer. So let's move into the first part of this talk, which is around the now, or being present. And I want you just to cast your minds back to a beautiful, joyful moment, perhaps from the past, in your own lives, and just to think about what happened back then. To think about perhaps how happy you were, how present you were in that moment, etc. I'll just give you 10 seconds to come up with an idea, but it's important to just think of this a moment. Anything, and it could be the recent past, it could be past. People have told me about canoeing on a river, having a bra with their friends. One guy spoke about being on a motorbike riding through the bush and talking to his son who was connected through the radio, through the helmets. So just try and think of something like this. Now I want you to think about when this was happening, when this joyful moment was happening. Some people talk about childbirth, giving birth to their first child or any child. Where was your attention? Was it in the moment or was it elsewhere? Were you thinking a lot at that moment? Were you living in the moment? And were there no other problems present in your life at that time? Okay. So, arguably, if you're doing the exercise correctly, your attention would have been on that moment. Everything would have been about on that river, listening to the bird sounds, feeling the warm sun on your skin. Would you have been thinking a lot? Again, probably not, because in that moment, everything would have been okay. Were you living in the moment? 100% living in the moment. And then, most importantly, were no other problems present in your life at that time? And the answer is no. Of course there were other problems in your life at that time. But because it was such a sensory experience, because you were able to bring all your attention to that particular moment, in that moment, there was nothing else wrong in the world. The world could have stopped right at the moment because you had found sort of a blissful moment. But the problems were still carrying on in the wider world. And this is what mindfulness and conscious living can teach you to do, is finding your center despite the hurricane and despite COVID and despite lockdown. We are able to find peace, rather, in that moment. So the present moment plays a fundamental role in mindfulness. And we are often not in the now. So where are we then? Guess where? Either yesterday, thinking about what happened yesterday, thinking about a conversation that happened 10 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago or an hour ago, thinking about what I should have said, what I could have said, what I should be doing. So we're definitely not in the present. And this is the whole challenge for us, and that's why it forms the starting point of today's presentation, or the week's presentation. And if you look at it in a visual way, we spend a lot of time in the past and future, and with a very little thin band in the present. Okay, so most of our thinking, and when those of you that have joined my other talks, we spoke about bathing, and we can lie in that bath for 20 minutes, but we're not even in the bath. Our heads are thinking about yesterday and what I've got to do, or I've still got to do the washing, or wash dishes, or clean the house, cook supper. So we don't spend much time in the present. This is how our psyche, if we could draw it, should be. We should be spending more time in the now. We can't deny the past. The past has happened, and we can't deny the future either, because it's going to happen, but we don't know. We can't predict that. So we should be focused on the now. So, and part of the now is our thoughts. Now, thoughts are a powerful tool, but they're extremely difficult to turn off when we don't need them anymore. So when we're using I mentioned this before, when we use the front of our brain, when we're using our executive functioning, then they're a powerful tool, because then I'm using my head. But when the back of my brain is sending me thoughts and be scared and, oh, remember what happened last time, memories, all this kind of stuff, it's difficult to turn off. And then our mind is controlling us, and it disconnects us from the present moment. Because the minute we start thinking, i.e. not using the front of our brains but the back, we are in the past or the future. Okay? And they disconnect us from anything that could be going on in the future. I even think of, and I'm guilty myself, of taking photographs or videoing lots of little things that I've got 2 young boys, and it disconnects you from the present moment. The minute you say, oh, I better try and take a photograph here or a video of it, now you're watching this thing through this camera. It's almost like looking at life through a judgmental lens. Rather just be there. Those memories are going to be stored in your head. I'll never forget a great anecdote. I traveled in the 1990s, early 90s, 91, 92, somewhere around there, and I was traveling around Turkey, Istanbul, and I was in one of their, I think it's called a dolmuş, their taxis, and a tramp got in the car. He certainly looked like a tramp. Looked a bit like Zeus. He had a long grey robe on with a big grey beard, very scruffy. I had my nice backpack. He had a sheet with a whole lot of clothing in it. And in those days, you had to take photographs and keep your spools, and then only develop them once you got back to London, wherever it was that we were traveling from. And I asked him, I said, where do you store all your, do you have a camera? Like what? So he goes, no, he's got no camera. But he had traveled all the way from China across the Trans-Siberian Railroad. And I said to him, where's your camera? He says, no, I don't need a camera. Everything is up in my head. So, because he was being present. And he said he'd do the 6 months of the year, just hit the road, become a tramp, and no one bothered him. And he would just be on the road, and stored everything up in his head. But he was living in the moment to moment, not having to take photographs. So, remember, our thoughts can disconnect us from the present moment and certainly become problematic when they're not true. We've touched on this, and we will probably touch on it again. Thought fusion. The minute we fuse with our thoughts, we think they're true. Our bodies can't tell the difference, so we react as though it's true. Okay, but they might be true. Just thinking something doesn't make it true. Thoughts are definitely not facts, and we need to learn. And part of this training is to teach you to start observing your thoughts rather than being caught up in this train. Because if you get caught up in the train of thinking, you're going to just get taken along with it, and it's going to keep pushing you back, or just like a tumbleweed, you're going to go along with these thoughts. And I keep reminding my clients and groups that I'm working with, in the present moment, there is seldom a problem. And people say, oh yeah, but I've still got an abusive husband, or I'm still in this terrible relationship, or I've got no money. But right now, as you talking to me, unless someone's hitting you on your head while I'm busy talking to you right now, there isn't a problem. There might be a problem in 5 minutes time or 10 minutes time, and there might have been a problem last night, but there's not a problem right now. Yes, you might have financial difficulties, but it's not happening right now as we're speaking. So once you finish talking to me and you have to go to the bank to go look at your bank balance, there might be a problem, but it's not in this moment. And again, I just repeat that we miss out on a lot of stuff happening in the moment because we're so caught up in the future or the past. Now, our attention. So we have our attention drawn away by many things: books, TVs, conversations, physical pain, but even our thoughts. Our thoughts can distract us. Okay? And they come from, there's two forces here. One, which demands our attention, and this can come from, as I said, internal or external sources, so our thoughts and our feelings. Okay? Or, and that's the internal obviously, and then all from outside sources: TV, sound, newspapers, mass media, social media, Facebook, etc. My son's just kind of got into his cell phone now, WhatsApping now, and I said, look, every time it beeps, it doesn't mean that you have to answer it or be there for the person, because he constantly beeps and he sprints across the house to go and see who messaged him. And I said, you're going to have to learn that you don't have to be there for that person who's talking to you all the time. Otherwise, it's constantly going to be demanding your attention and pulling you out. Now, there's someone else that can demand your attention, or else can control this to a large degree. And the question is, who is that person that regulates attention? And it's me. Okay, no one else but me. And mindfulness, consciousness, teaches you that I'm able to regulate where my thoughts are going. I'm not supposed to be thinking about that right now. I'm supposed to be doing my presentation, for example. So I just want you to quickly, I won't even let you do this for a minute. I just want you to stop your thoughts just for 15 seconds. We've done this example using a polar bear. So I want you to stop with thoughts. Don't think of a polar bear for the next 10 seconds. I'm just going to keep quiet, and I want you not to think of a polar bear, and I'm going to ask you, how many times did you think of it in 10 seconds? Go. Okay, stop. How was that? How many times did you think of a polar bear? Many people say 3, 4. Some people say, I couldn't stop thinking of the polar bear because you told us to think, I mustn't think of a polar bear, so all I thought about was the polar bear. So thoughts demand a lot of our attention, and it's difficult, if not impossible, to stop them by trying not to think about them. Because the more you say, I mustn't think of the polar bear, the more you're going to think of the polar bear. Or the more you say, I mustn't think of my thoughts. This is why when you say, I mustn't be anxious, I mustn't be sad, I mustn't be insecure, the more you say that, the more insecure, anxious, and sad you're going to feel. It's better to, again, accept it or just allow them to trape us through your thinking, and just to keep moving, almost like a traffic cop directing your thoughts. I'm not certain of this number. I think we have a lot more than 50,000 thoughts per day. It's probably more like 500,000. I mean, our brain is firing on all cylinders constantly, and they can be handy. They can be creative. They can be new ideas. This is when we are using our thoughts, and we can make plans, we can strategize, we can set up goals. But thoughts can also be extremely problematic, and they can be problematic when we worry or ruminate or have negative self. We call this negative self-talk. I posted quite a few posts on my page about ANTS, automatic negative thought systems. And we use different ways to deal with this. Even in psychology, sometimes we're taught to distract, but these are not good. So as individuals, we either suppress our thoughts and our feelings, or we distract ourselves through hard work, reading, drinking, smoking, etc. or by challenging our thoughts. And in psychology, we're often taught reality testing. We must challenge the client's thoughts, but these are all temporary fixes, okay? They're all rebound, and they're all going to come up, and if not, they're going to build up some sort of attention and even end up being in like a conversion disorder and create a lot of this in the head thinking, because you cannot block them out. The more you try and block them out, the more they're going to come back. And when we're doing this, it's a constant struggle. And we cannot be focused on what I'm trying to do, because I'm trying to keep these thoughts away. It's like holding this beach ball metaphor that we spoke about. You know, a beach ball keeps popping up if you're trying to hold it underwater. So it sets up a whole struggle inside our system. But when we're mindfully dealing with our thoughts, we can learn to observe these thoughts and go, I just thought that I'm not going to be able to handle this lockdown. I've just thought that I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. Now, there's nothing wrong with having that thought. And if I just observe it, it doesn't mean I'm going to have a nervous breakdown just because I thought I'm taking this quite hard. And we learn to take our thoughts less seriously and our emotions less seriously and let them pass, because it's like a wave. Because in 10, 15 minutes time, unless I'm fusing with it, unless I'm focusing on it, it's going to pass, that thought, and I'll be having a happy moment, and I won't just be feeling down in the dumps. And this way there's no struggle. So we often talk about the struggle switch metaphor. Switch off the switch. Stop struggling with your thoughts, stop struggling with your feeling, and we call it turning them into clean discomfort rather than having them dirty discomfort. When we don't want to have them, it's called dirty discomfort, but by switching off the struggle switch, we can turn it into clean discomfort. So when we mindfully deal with our thoughts, thinking demands a lot of our attention and takes a lot of our focus away from what we should be working on. And when we learn to deal mindfully with them, we learn to focus that attention to a point. And that point can be an anchor, and we can keep coming back to that anchor, all right? And in mindfulness, we get taught to use your breath as an anchor. You can use your body as an anchor. You can use an object, so a candle that you're staring at the flame. You could use a sound, okay? It could be music even. It could be a smell. It's normally a sensory experience, but breath is one of the simplest because we breathe all the time. So when you're mindfully dealing with your thoughts, you can use this anchor, and every time you find yourself getting pulled away, you just go, I'm busy breathing right now. And this breath, used as an anchor, is able to help you to use that breath to start observing your thoughts and to keep coming back. So you just keep coming back to your breath, and it's as simple as saying, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. And then you go, oh, I wonder what the dogs are barking at. No, I'm busy sitting and breathing right now. Okay, so you keep pulling back. So this helps you to observe and helps you to detach from that thought stream that we spoke about. All right, so then so we've sort of come to the end of the basics of what is attention and what is the now and how do we use the breath as an anchor. So what we're going to be covering in the training is we're going to be doing, so today was about attention. Tomorrow's session will be about automaticity and how we constantly get into habitual thinking and habit and impulsivity and reactive and lack of self-control. So we'll say things that we don't mean because there's no filter. And then judgment is a great, there's I think it's a biblical phrase where it says, let the scales fall from your eyes so that we can see clearly. It's a great session on judgment. Session 4 is on acceptance, a very tough session. Like I said, if you've done any of these sessions with me before, I place a lot of emphasis on acceptance because we're constantly running away from our feelings and our thoughts rather than accepting them and allowing them to be there. Then goals, we're not talking about goals per se, but more about many people start living so far in the future because of their goals that they miss out again on what's happening in the present. So it's how do we achieve our goals and plan for our goals in the future by focusing on the present and what I need to do now. And then compassion. The compassion will speak to not necessarily compassion just for others, because so many of us are people pleasers and we just do everything for everyone else. But this session 6 is on compassion for ourselves. We cannot have compassion for other people if we don't have compassion for ourselves, and if we don't love ourselves and we don't give ourselves time out and ourselves time to have a luxurious bath and literally a time out. Every day I say to my young boys, I said, okay, Dad's having a bit of time out now, just give me 20 to 30 minutes alone. You guys get on with whatever you need to do, but I need some time just to clear my head from the constant, because if you've got young kids, any of you know, moms, dads, there's a constant, they don't stop talking, so there's a constant barrage of sensory overstimulation, I want to say. Then session 7, this ego and ego identity. I've got another session I want to do on top of this session. That's the one where I want to just wing it without PowerPoint, where I'm going to talk about ego and attachment and how we tend to want to hold on to things rather than becoming detached from them, and how we need to discover a more dynamic sense of self, a dynamic sense of ego, rather than saying, well, I am a husband, or I am a wife, or I am this title, a manager in my company. Because these things change, and when they change, we feel like our lives have fallen apart. And I think over this lockdown and the amount of people that are being retrenched and etc., is phenomenal. So change is going to become a big thing in the next 3 to 6 months. And then session 8 will be around integration. So thank you for joining in. Thanks for listening. Tomorrow, hopefully join in. If you like it, leave a comment. How's it again? And then, feel free to share and invite people to join my course. All right. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.